Well, it's all happening just as he seems to have found his mojo. Opposition leader Anthony Albanese has tested positive tonight to COVID. We'll talk in a moment to our political editor Chris Ullman about what that means for the election campaign. Last night we headed to a marginal electorate for the first leaders' debate.
So it is a choice between a stronger economy and a weaker economy.
Who I really dislike, scum.
We must do better, and we can do better.
I can't believe anything you say.
It's dartboard diplomacy at a suburban bowls club while Scott Morrison and Anthony Albanese have their first public face-off across town.
So you've changed
your
position?
No, we haven't changed our position, Anthony. I'm just being very clear so you don't misrepresent it.
We've ventured into one of Australia's most marginal seats, Lily, here on Brisbane's north side, to try and gauge just how much public interest there is in this first election debate. As you can see, the answer is not much.
The room next door is where all the action is at Club Chermside, with a weekly darts night drawing in a sizable crowd.
What's the main focus here tonight, the darts or the debate?
The darts, definitely.
Bob is one voter who likes what he's seen so far from Anthony Albanese.
I think we need a change, so that's the main reason. I'm a bit of a swinging voter.
But there's still plenty of people who think the incumbent is on target for another term.
Well, he's done pretty well, I reckon, in the last couple of years.
I thought Albanese's start to his campaign was very poor when he was asked questions and couldn't answer them.
Just because he doesn't know the cash rate doesn't mean much to me. I mean, I don't know it, so, you know.
There were no major slip-ups from either candidate at the People's Forum, which allowed 100 undecided voters to ask their own questions. One topic, which came up twice, the Prime Minister's failure to implement a Federal Integrity Commission, breaking an election promise.
We have that legislation. It deals with criminal matters. It is not a kangaroo court.
The government's model would have ministers determine whether they can be investigated or not.
Anthony Albanese was busy trying to sell his vision for the future.
Scott and I agree that Australia is the greatest country on earth. But I believe we can have a better future if we have a better government.
While Scott Morrison had a mountain of figures.
$5.1 billion a year and $5.2 billion.
To back up his claim of being a better economic manager.
It's always Labor that does the big changes that make a difference to people's lives.
But it's always the Liberals and Nationals have to work out how to pay for these things. And that's what we've done over the last 8 years.
Even the Prime Minister conceded Medicare and the National Disability Insurance Scheme were successful big-ticket projects launched by Labor. Back at the darts night, some are wondering why Mr Albanese hasn't outlined any big policies this campaign to back up that grand vision.
You can't be scared of the future. You have to shape the future, otherwise the future will shape you.
I think they've done a fantastic job of saying that everything from bushfires and floods and cyclones are Morrison's fault, but I don't really know what they do.
It was time for these voters to make their choice in the most fitting way for a darts competition.
Well, I don't think Scott Morrison's done too much wrong, and I don't think Albanese's got the experience. There you go.
The darts aimed at the candidate they're least likely to vote for.
Scum on.
I'm going to throw it at Albanese because I don't think he really knows what he's doing.
The two men angling to lead the country, both receiving their share of stings, some just due to family loyalties.
Because my dad told me to vote for ScoMo.
Time for a change.
ScoMo winning the dartboard poll with 7 votes to 4, while Albo scored a victory at the People's Forum with 40% to his opponent's 35%. Importantly, those still undecided making up a hefty 25% that could make or break this campaign for either party.
We can't turn back now. We're heading in the right direction. We want to keep going there.
And I want to unite the country. I want to not be a Prime Minister who's always looking for the wedge, always looking for the division.
Well, they've got more than a few darts to worry about now because 25% of those undecided voters left the debate last night still undecided, and Albo now has COVID. Nine's political editor Chris Uhlmann joins me now. Chris, it's good to talk with you always. What's this diagnosis going to mean for the election campaign?
Well, like anyone else in New South Wales, he now has to isolate for the next 7 days. He says he's going to continue his responsibilities from home. There will have been contingency plans for this, Tracy, because this was always high risk. But I have to say, he was taking a lot of precautions on the plane, where all the journalists are. But then we saw him the other day at the Byron Bay Festival, Blues Fest, and I think that's got to be the epicentre of the unvaccinated in Australia. And when he was shaking hands in that crowd, I thought, gee, that's high risk.
And he shook hands with the PM last night. They got pretty close for a moment. I mean, I bet he's hoping that he gave him a sneaky dose, so they both have to take a week off.
That's right. It would be to his advantage, and maybe a 3-day lag on Scott Morrison before he has it again. Don't forget, he's had it before, so the chances, I assume, of him getting it again so soon after he's had it, plus being triple dose vaccinated, well, maybe the Prime Minister is safe, but certainly there'll be some nervous moments on the Prime Minister's plane tonight as well. So this has really thrown a spanner into the works of this election campaign. 7 days is a long time out, a whole week out of a 6-week campaign.
Where was he going in the next 7 days? Because now he has to go by Zoom. It's just not the same, is it?
Yeah, well, he was heading off to Perth, and that's very important because it's there that the Labor Party thinks that it can pick up 2 seats. And by the way, and breaking all, as far as I can remember, every time we've had a launch, it's been in Brisbane or Sydney or sometimes in Melbourne. But this time, the Labor Party is launching in Perth. Happily for him, it's on May the 1st. He'll be out of quarantine by then.
All right, let's talk about last night. Did either of those men last night give us a clear reason to choose one of them over the other? Because correct me if I'm wrong, that's what the point of an election campaign is, isn't it?
No, and it's amazing how well the people at the Bowls Club picked up on that, because the missing heart for the Labor Party is that Anthony Albanese is giving you every reason not to vote for Scott Morrison and almost no reason to vote for the Labor Party. So what he's doing at the moment, whether he means to or not, is pushing towards a hung parliament where he'll have to negotiate to be Prime Minister. Now, the other question is, can the government hold its majority? Scott Morrison carries all the scars of 3 years in office, and he sounded a lot like a manager last night, not like somebody who's got a pitch for the future. So what's missing from this campaign from both sides is any sense of inspiration for the Australian people coming out of the pandemic.
Exactly. There are no big ideas, are there? I mean, how are we supposed to choose? And we were reminded last night that Labor gave us Medicare, the NDIS, the PBS. We need those ideas, don't we?
Yes, and I thought the Prime Minister missed a moment. He did very well on votes when he went in on Anthony Albanese. What he could have said when Anthony Albanese said the Labor Party is the party of big ideas, I would have said, well, what's yours? Because there is none in this Labor Party platform at the moment. They might need to construct one given where they are at the moment, because Anthony Albanese is not doing enough to get people across the line to vote for Labor. And in the absence of that, what we're seeing, just like we saw in the Bowls Club, just like we saw at that People's Forum last night, 1/4 of the Australian population is still undecided at the moment. Just 5 weeks out, 4 weeks out now from a federal election. That is a huge number, and that could break in multiple different ways.
Let's get on to your pet topic now, because the Libs are also saying we're the ones to run national security when they have just allowed China to establish a security base in the Solomons. I mean, they were caught napping, weren't they? Surely.
Oh, look, this can be seen as a very big foreign policy fail, but can I say it's one that's a long time in the making. In fact, we've been neglecting the Pacific now really for the last 20 years. The Prime Minister has this program called the Pacific Step Up because people did recognise the problem that we've got in the region with China. But Tracy, in the end, the problem in the Solomon Islands is money. Essentially, these politicians are being bought by China, and Australia can't compete in that race. So I don't know that there's anything the Australian government could have done to stop that. What we now need to make sure that we do is ensure that no military base is established in the Solomons. We have tried since the Second World War to make sure that there was no threat to our east. We already have one coming from our west. We cannot allow our security to be compromised by a hostile force essentially setting up shop in the Pacific.
We're told that the people last night were allowed to come up with their own questions and they weren't vetted. The questions were about national security, about health, about the NDIS, about housing affordability, the Federal Integrity Commission. There was nothing about the Warringah candidate Catherine Deves and her transphobia. And that's been such a dominant story in the media. What does that tell us?
I think it tells us something about the media, quite frankly. I think that is one of those stories that is very much inside the beltway of Sydney at the moment. But if it does have any echo outside that, I think the problem that the Liberal Party has in those seats of Wentworth, Warringah and North Sydney, where something like that will resonate. But outside that, I think that it's a 90-10 proposition one Labor Party person put to me, that people outside the metropolitan areas are thinking, I agree with Catherine Deeves, and that will push One Nation preferences and Palmer United preferences into the coalition's column. So it may well be that some of those media outlets are actually helping Scott Morrison get elected.
We'll see who's right. OK, good to talk with you. Thanks, Chris.